All right, cousin. It's Monday, March 9th. It's 8:09 p.m. Central Time here in the United States of America, off the Gulf of America. This will post tomorrow morning at some point, so who knows where oil prices will be, the world will be at, who knows. When I went to sleep last night, it looked like oil was going to crest over 120 a barrel. By the time I had dropped my two daughters off at daycare, we were down to under 100, and then by the end of the day to 85. And when last night when I went to sleep, cousin, I was really thinking, you know what, I need to use our next episode as a therapy session because I think I got this wrong. I've been laughing about this and how bored I was of it all of this year so far. And I made the same mistake I made with Russia. I was like, oh, I knew that this was stupid. So there was no way that the Trump administration could possibly double down on this. And I was beginning to doubt myself, even though I had kind of, I know we don't talk about our book that much, but I actually was long the things that you should have been long, not for these reasons. Like it was just kind of accidental that I was in the right position for some of these things. And now, of course, like I'm getting to the end of the day and I'm like, fuck it, I was actually right. like I should have been bored by this. It's a short thing. Last thing before I let you sort of take the first word here. Here are a smattering of things that Donald Trump has all said in the past 24 hours. Quote, the war will be a short-term excursion, end quote. Quote, the war will continue until the enemy is totally and decisively defeated, end quote. Quote, war already won in many ways, end quote. Quote, we haven't won enough, end quote. Quote, we go forward more determined than ever to achieve ultimate victory, end quote. Quote, I think the war is very complete, pretty much, end quote. End quote. The war is almost over. We are far ahead of the original estimate we made that the war would last 4 to 5 weeks, end quote. Lots of quotes and end quotes. Where do you want to start, cousin?
Let's just start right there. You know, let's just start right there. Like, if you go into a restaurant and you're sitting there with your spouse, partner, wife, whatever, girlfriend, and you're like, I'm going to have the fish. All right, hon, that's cool. No, you know what? I think I'm going to go with 3 appetizers today. I'm going to just mix it up, you know? No, I'm going to have the fish. No, you know what? Like, fuck it. Let's go do the steak. No, the 3 appetizers, though, I've seen it. Like, that's a cool thing to do. What am I getting at? What you know is that you don't know much about yourself at that moment, but you know that you don't really know what you're going to eat. It's flexible. And I think that's important to understand in this environment because it means that the war aims are not clear. They're malleable. That means that victory goals are malleable as well. And that goes back to my, point. I think you and I have talked about this over the course of the last year and a half, which is that President Trump, it's always a mistake to try to gauge his preferences.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's actually very much amenable to being forecasted through his constraints because he's the kind of guy walks into a bar and says, I don't know which one of these ladies I'm going home with, and I don't really care, but I'm going home with somebody. And so I think that that's kind of the way this is. George Soros, the famous, investor and foil of the right and the source of many conspiracy theories. But George Soros made a lot of money in his life betting on geopolitics, actually. He was the original
Mm-hmm.
geopolitical trader in many ways. And one of the, concepts that he brought to us is this concept of reflexivity. This idea that the markets, as they're being influenced by policymakers, basically end up influencing the real economy and the policymakers themselves. There's a reflexivity between the markets and the real world. So most people listening to this, they think that the market is something esoteric, like price of oil. What does that really mean? Even worse, derivatives. Oh my God. But the reality is that eventually a price of oil goes high enough, it becomes a strain on the economy. You get a recession, people lose their jobs. With President Trump, I think he's like reflexivity on steroids, in that I think honestly what happened today was he was like, okay, well, that went too far. And I did kind of beat up Iran quite a bit. And I have kind of, accomplished all the goals I set out. So let me say it's over. And then boom, we had the day in the green. Oil prices fall. He's like, maybe I have a little bit more runway. Let's So I'm not saying that's what happened today, but it almost felt like it. Like after he sort of pivoted towards de-escalation, the market ends up rallying, oil prices fall to 85, And he's like, well, maybe I got a couple of more days in before this
because
gets out of hand.
literally 2 hours later, Aaron Burnett is on CNN saying, we've got word that they're planning maybe some operation to go secure the enriched uranium. Like I've got the Chappelle Show skit with the yellow cake like running around in my head. So like we're back to ground troops now.
Don't
Like
drop the yellow cake, man. Pray to God you don't drop the yellow cake. Yeah. Well, either way, I just, but what, like stepping above everything, I just want to say everyone who's listening to this and who's like a Trump fan or a MAGA fan and is telling me there is some 5D chess going on. No, there isn't. When the president of the United States of America is that, let's use a generous term, that open
mercurial.
to
Mercurial is the word.
mercurial. Okay. Yeah. Not tied to a set of war aims. When he's that malleable, I mean, that just tells you that, yeah, this is not something that he walked into with a high conviction. If you are hungry and you want steak, you walk into a restaurant, you tell your wife, listen, I don't care what you're ordering, I'm ordering steak. All right, that's where we're going tonight. And President Trump is going through the menu and being like, man, maybe we do this, maybe we do that. We'll see.
Yeah. But breaking news here on the podcast. Here's a latest tweet from our president. Quote, if Iran does anything that stops the flow of oil within the Strait of Hormuz, they will be hit by the United States of America 20 times harder than they have been hit thus far. Additionally, we will take out easily destroyable targets that will make it virtually impossible for Iran to ever be built back as a nation again. Death, fire, and fury will rain upon them, but I hope and pray that it does not happen. This is a gift from the United States of America to China and all of those nations that heavily use the Hormuz Strait. Hopefully, it is a gesture that will be greatly appreciated. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Cousin, literally my first thought here is, we've reached the fire and fury part of the negotiating tactic.
Yeah.
That was right. That's what he did with North Korea right before he was having the cheeseburger with Kim. So maybe we're in range. Maybe we're good. Maybe we're not good. 20 times harder. I don't know.
Well, I mean, me personally, I would find that comment is healthy, actually, from a geopolitical perspective, from an economic perspective. What would be unhealthy if President Trump said the opposite? Something like, we here in the United States of America have all the oil we need. We're not going to secure the Strait of Hormuz. Many countries have been riding on our security guarantees. And if they want to deal with Iran and the security of flow of energy, they can deal with it themselves. Now, again, if you're a MAGA fan, if you watch YouTube clips to get your information about geopolitics, you may...
I mean, careful. Some people are watching on YouTube to get information
that's,
about
that's fair. But look, I mean, if that is the extent of your sort of dabbling in geopolitics, you might sit there and say, but wait a minute, what's wrong with that version? I mean, like, we don't actually import anything from the Strait of Hormuz. The United States of America imports negligible oil barrels that, if they didn't land in the US, would do nothing. The problem is it's an interconnected commodity. There's no way to prevent oil prices in the US. I mean, I just filled up a car in California, and it's, my fault for living here, but it was $5.70 a gallon.
Mm-hmm.
And so despite the fact that the US has healthy domestic, natural gas and oil production, energy costs are going to skyrocket here too. We cannot avoid a recession, even though Strait of Hormuz largely matters for China and the rest. So when I hear his comments, I fully expected this. I think you and I have talked on this podcast that there's this element of this conflict that will go punitive. I believe we use that term, punitive.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there is a moment when the US will just say, like, look, bro, we're not going to chase your drones and missiles. Like, we're just going to, like, hit your water treatment facilities. I think I said that on this podcast, and Israelis or Americans hit the desalination plant, like, days after we mentioned, like, this kind of a punitive. And that's what he means. And the reason that I think that, as far as the world economy is concerned, we're getting to the end stage of this conflict. And the reason I say that is that for two reasons. First of all, President Trump just basically announced to the world that he is going to take the gloves off. He is going to be punitive. This is what NATO did to Serbia in 1999 after they grew frustrated with Serbian tactics of avoiding direct confrontation with NATO. NATO decided, okay, cool, you're not going to let us fly below beneath 30,000 feet, we're going to start destroying your infrastructure, your rail facilities, your factories, whether they're dual use or not. Like, we're just going to bomb you to the Middle Ages. As like General Wesley Clark literally said that we're going to bomb Serbia into the Middle Ages. So it became a punitive campaign. And Serbs, my countrymen, we withstood 2 extra months of that because what's up? Let's go. you know. Um, but the truth is that it was like Wesley Clark and Bill Clinton. Like it wasn't Donald Trump. And Wesley Clark, well, that statement was kind of harsh, taking Serbia to Middle Ages. He wasn't saying I'm going to rain death, fire, and fury.
Yes, and he certainly wasn't. So it's 10. I was playing a game with myself. How long would it take me to say crystal meth Rumsfeld? It's not crystal meth Rumsfeld, which is I forget who said this on Twitter, who described Pete Hegseth this way. But really, like you've really done me a huge favor there. Literally perfect. Couldn't ask for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the Trump administration is not the Clinton administration, and when Clinton took the gloves off, it was still like relatively gentle. Like this is not going to be gentle. And so that's the first reason. Like President Trump has to say that, by the way, for all of you who are sitting there and being like, well, that's really mean. It's like, yes, but it's better to signal to Iran that the US is about to start committing gross violations of humanitarian law so that
Yeah, I
they
mean,
know.
arguably already have, but I hear you. But that's actually that I think that's a good segue because we spent the first 11 minutes talking about Trump and psychoanalyzing him. But really, this comes down to Iran. And in
Yeah,
some ways, the most surprising thing that happened, I mean, I will say the oil spike and then collapse was pretty surprising. But the appointment of Mojtaba Khamenei as the supreme leader, I don't know about you, that stopped me in my tracks. I was making fun
interesting.
of people on Twitter literally 48 hours ago, being like, there's no way. That's not going to happen. Like, the whole point of the Islamic Revolution was to get rid of the hereditary monarchy. There is no way they're going to do this. And apparently they did it. I mean, Mojtaba also has not been seen. There were reports that he was injured, that maybe he had an amputation as a result of the injury. Trump has already said that this is not going to work. I'm not going to replace a Khamenei with a Khamenei. The dude is not long for this world. Maybe this is the Iranian regime. Like, I can sort of get into the religious calculus there. It's like, well, because the supreme leader was martyred, it's not actually hereditary monarchy. You're actually just replacing him with his son because he was taken out prematurely, and they're probably going to take out the son too. So this way we buy a few extra days, and the real supreme leader who's going to emerge is not actually going to be a threat. And in the meantime, we can still
I
mess
feel like you have
around in
this
the
in your
Strait of Hormuz.
garage. This is in your garage with like cloth, like rope
Oh,
connecting what?
I'm definitely starting to get into my rust and coal phase of analysis here. Like I'm thinking deep thoughts at night, and is there some kind of supernatural thing involved here? And what does it all mean? And is time just a flat circle? Because time is a flat circle. Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, I was surprised by that. But the other, I mean, the other question is how long can Iran stay in the fight? And
Yeah,
I don't
let's
feel
talk
like I
about
have
that.
I don't feel like I have good info here because some people are saying, the missiles are slowing down, the interceptors are going to be gone, they're going to be dead soon. And then I look at Iranian security analysts and they're like, no, they're still hitting Israel and they're still hitting critical sites in the Gulf and places like this. Like they're still popping off.
Well, we
And
have
sort
the
of
data.
everything in between,
By the way,
Well, go for it.
like, yeah, so we have the data. My team and I are monitoring it for our clients. This was reported by Bloomberg today, by the way, and this is one of the reasons that oil prices did start falling even before President Trump said what he said. March 9th, which is a Monday, was a surprisingly low volume attack.
Mhm.
So missiles really have collapsed since day one of this conflict. The drone barrages have been steady at about 160 drones per day across the Gulf. On March 9th, for some reason, even the drone attacks have fallen. And here, I want to just say one thing. I think I've been very wrong on this one particular analogy. I think Kosovo and Serbia 1999 is a great analogy. This is what's coming for Iran. I don't think they can stand this, Jacob. I don't. I don't think they're religious zealots. I think they're corrupt, rich, kleptocrats. Like, I don't think that these guys actually believe in anything. Okay, like, so the Treasury Department under Scott Bessent has sanctioned uh, Khomeini's son. He apparently has like wired $300 million through crypto. Like, look, listen, It could be Western propaganda I'm just spewing. Maybe I'm just repeating CIA psyops, but like, come on, like, don't tell me these Iranian dudes are like actually committed zealots. They don't seem like it. So yeah, when a B-52 bomber starts flying over your head, and why is it important that the Americans are using B-52 bombers? Basically, a piece of junk that's 70 years old. Why is it important? Because it was designed for carpet bombing, and it is completely and utterly indefensible. That's like embarrassing. When you cannot protect yourself from a B-52, it means that
Yeah.
you are like a dog on its back hoping for a belly rub. And that's what Iran is right now. So that's the first issue I want to say. The punitive stuff is going to get ugly. And these guys, I don't think, have a stomach for it because I don't think they actually want to meet the Mahdi. The second point is I think I've been wrong by using a different analogy. So the Serbia punitive analogy is right. What's wrong is the Houthis. You know, one of the things I kept repeating on our podcast, Jacob, is like, look, man, there's an asymmetry of technology. Iran cannot defend itself, but it can threaten the Strait of Hormuz. But what if the Houthi example is wrong? So I looked at some numbers on this.
Hmm.
In 2024, the United States and United Kingdom conducted something like between 70 and 100 airstrikes on the Houthis in all of 2024, which confirms a sneaking suspicion I had even back in 23, for which I'm sure you disagree with me at the time because you really care about supply chains. But I think that the Red Sea is completely fucking irrelevant. Like, completely and utterly irrelevant as a seaway because it's not a choke point. And the truth is, we survived. And you know what? The numbers reflect my point. America and the United Kingdom just simply did not really take any serious effort. So I don't think that I've been right by using the Houthi example where they shut down the Red Sea for 3 years. I just think no one cared, Jacob. I think everyone was like, fuck it, we'll go around Africa. It's fine. And so that's the difference. I do think that there's something different this time around. And I think that that difference is that the United States and Israel are absolutely taking it seriously. They're now using the heavy machinery, the slow 70-year-old behemoths designed to carpet bomb like Soviet cities, you know?
Hmm.
And they're now using that against Iran. Man, we never did that against the Houthis. God bless them. You know, I kind of always have a soft spot for the Houthis. You know, they're out there fighting the good fight. You know, they're just awesome. You know, chewing cud, just shooting rockets. And I think the US and the UK were just like, yeah, whatever, fine. You know, like let the crazy Greek shippers go through the Red Sea, whatever. Now it's real. And I think that the level of pain that the US has imposed on Iran is being reflected in the data, which suggests that the drone attacks have slowed down.
Yeah, I hear you. I think you're right that the Red Sea. And by the way, I do believe the U.S. has used. Oh no, no, no! You're right. The U.S. only used B-2 bombers rather than B-52s to strike the Houthis. So there you go. Um, but no, I think you're right in the sense that the Red Sea was not existential. And this is, I mean, kind of a funny point. It was already not existential because it's not a choke point like the Strait of Hormuz is. There isn't 20% of oil coming out through this choke point. Now, it is a heavily trafficked trade route. And if oil was 120 or 150 a barrel, having to go all the way around Africa,
Mm,
now the numbers start
mhm.
to add up. But the Red Sea was shut down when oil was 60 a barrel or even flirting with less than that. So when you're looking at those numbers, it's like, okay, like it's just a 2 week delay because I got to rearrange my ships and I got to go around Africa. And once you do that, you don't switch back unless there is some serious financial incentive to do so. So you're right in the sense that it's not a choke point in the same way that the Strait of Hormuz is. I don't know that there is another
There
choke point
isn't.
quite like
No,
the
no,
Strait of Hormuz.
Jacob.
Like even Malacca is not
No,
really like
no,
that. So
exactly. No, no, but this is key. We got to pause here.
mhm.
For all of you who are listening to this and you're not market participant, you're not financial guys, I know some of our listeners are like, bro, the only people listening to this are traders. I'm like, no. My scaffolding friend out in British Columbia, shout out to Rafer, the hero who shorted, who went long VIX in January of 2020 and bested many hedge fund CIOs. That guy's listening to this. So for those of you who are not seeped in a ludicrous amount of geography, I don't think there is, Jacob, another piece of geography like this. The Suez Canal ensured that the Gibraltar Straits are not the only way to enter and exit the Mediterranean.
Hmm.
And okay, fine, the Dardanelles, Gallipoli.
Yes, the Bosporus is kind of has a
Yep.
similar dynamic, but it's not as important globally. It's really just why the Russians are screwed.
The Russians, Turkey. It's important for that region, but like on a
Yeah.
global scale, I mean, there's just like no place on the planet. Okay, fine. Yes, we could say that Bosphorus is critical, but other than that, that's wheat from Ukraine. Although even that is not critical, as we
Well,
found out
because
during the
I
Ukrainian
mean,
war.
we had the proof in practice. Like it
Thank
just
you.
went over land to other places in
To
Europe
the
and got
Baltic.
out eventually. So, and yes, there was a large spike in the price of some agricultural commodities, but everything normalized. Like it was one good
So,
year basically for those
hey,
commodities.
remember when that idiot came on our show and said the Abraham Accords don't matter? So here's one way it would matter. You know what'd be cool? You know what'd be super cool? If you could ship all this stuff through a pipeline to Israeli ports via Jordan.
I don't buy the pipeline argument because pipelines can be blown up super
Okay, fine.
easily and
Fair.
sabotaged super easily. Like
Fair. So
what's
it's a volatile region. Volatile region. You put stuff on ships. It's got to go through Strait of Hormuz. And so this is why the only thing that people look, the only thing market participants right now, investors are watching. So if you're not in the markets and you're just listening to us because we're funny, let me tell you the truth. Nobody trading anything cares about rockets to Israel. Well, we just don't. Like Iran and Israel can shoot rockets at each other for the next 10 years. Cool, whatever. Investors only care about stuff being put on ships and transiting through this unique piece of geography on the planet. Like to use your Dune analogy, because I know you're a huge fan and I am too, like Middle East is not Arrakis. Like Strait of Hormuz is Arrakis. This is the most important piece of geography on the planet. It really is. And we're seeing that today. And so the question now becomes, does Iran have anything left to threaten it? And I think that one of the reasons that the market kind of calmed down today is not just because of President Trump flip flopping and stuff, but it's also those numbers did really kind of dip. It starts, I was operating under the assumption that if the Houthis could do it, well, Iran can do it. But when I actually dug into the numbers, you start seeing nobody really cared about countering the Houthis. Like it just wasn't that intense of an operation. And the other thing that I think we should also point out is I think the Houthis just have an extremely high pain tolerance. They
Yeah.
live in a place where, if you bomb the Houthis into medieval times, as Wesley Clark said he would do to my homeland, I think the Houthis would be like, bro, we're there. Have you been here? We're already in medieval times. I'm not sure that that's the case in Iran, which is a economy in trouble, but it's not Yemen. Iran is a sophisticated, complex, modern economy with highly educated people. I mean, I don't think that anyone in
Yeah.
Iran is looking
I,
forward to that.
I think there's two things to say here. The first is, and President Trump is making this mistake, and many American presidents have made this mistake. I mean, I could almost like when Trump was listing off, oh, we destroyed their Navy and we destroyed their Air Force and we've destroyed this and we destroyed that. I mean, I was like, yeah, and go back to the briefings with Westmoreland about Vietnam. And yes, we
Mm.
destroyed this much and we destroyed this many things and they're decimated and we decimated them and we obliterated them and the kill rates are amazing and the ratios are wonderful. And like, it's all true and it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't actually stop what you're talking about, which is, can you block the Strait of Hormuz? And all you need to block the Strait of Hormuz is you have to be able to blow up one tanker a month,
Yep.
every 2 months. It doesn't have to be with an anti-ship missile. It doesn't have to be with anything fancy. It can be, by the way, I finally watched Syriana. What a weird time to watch Syriana.
Yeah.
It just has to be the random Pakistani kid on the boat with the bomb driving it straight into the thing. That's
With a
all it
Stinger
has to
missile,
be.
which I don't even
And
think
let's
would
say,
work.
and by
But
the way, let's say you B-52 it. Forget Wisconsin. It's going to be a Houston parking lot. It's going to be terrible. Okay, then the only thing that's going to be left is people like the Houthis, sand people from
yes,
Star Wars, who are like, our entire existence is
but
just,
let me
we're going to
counter.
take pot shots into the strait, and can we get one of them? So like it doesn't actually fix the problem with the Strait of Hormuz.
Let me counter for just a second.
Please.
If the goal is regime change, I think your Vietnam example historically is just correct. Like, Iran will fight. It will fight the America on the beaches. It will fight it in the villages, in the streets, and so on. I get it. But the issue is that if this is just, look, we wanted to set you back 10 years on your missiles and your nuclear, and now we're done, which is kind of what President Trump was signaling today. Why would you continue to threaten the Strait of Hormuz? And you might say, well, because you want to make sure that the Americans never try this again. Don't flirt with regime change with us. We sit astride the Strait of Hormuz, which is fair. I just do think that we have to understand that at that point, the punitive air campaign, like, how long are you going to hold out? I understand why the Vietnamese held out as long as they did and ultimately defeated the US, because the goals of Americans at the time were much loftier, much more difficult to achieve. Complete regime change, reunification of Vietnam under the South's
Well, yeah, but for,
leadership.
for the for the Vietnamese, I mean, the problem with, I mean, there were many problems with Vietnam, but if you want to like put it down into two sentences, it's that the United States thought it was fighting a Cold War battle, and Vietnam thought it was fighting a battle of national self determination. And I
Yeah.
think and this goes back. I mean, I've said this a few times on the podcast. Back in January, I think there was a wedge here. If President Trump had pushed the button then, that
Mm.
maybe you would have gotten
With
this.
the
But
protests,
but
you
right
mean?
now, like the folks who would have protested are dead. Their skulls have been crushed. And just look at what's happened over the last couple of days. You've had the White House make statements about the territorial integrity of Iran, like suffering. Like maybe the Azeris are going to come in, or maybe the Kurds are going to come in. So you've got that going on in the Iranian mind, which that will take them back to Russia and the British and the Great Game and everybody taking things from them. So you're rallying around the flag there. You killed the supreme leader and his children and his grandchildren in his own home. Like you're rallying around the flag there as well. And then the Israelis struck, what was it, 30 oil depots in Tehran, and you've got those black, clouds coming in and sulfuric rain and everything else raining down. Even Lindsey fucking Graham came out and criticized the Israelis for going too far today and hitting the oil depots in Iran. Like that's how bad that was. So you're going to get this rally around the flag thing for Iranians in the short term. But this is something that I thought really were ahead of the game on. Once President Trump pulls back and once this is over, and then the rally around the flag effect goes away, and then Iranians have to look at each other and say, well, who is responsible, who is accountable, who will pay for this strategy that put us in this position against them? And then you're in total regime instability land. And this goes back to, and then it just has to be one ragtag group of militants who want to hide out in the mountains, who have a good view of the strait, to knock out shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. And then there's nobody you call, there's nobody you carpet bomb, unless you're going to deploy, special forces, the Delta Force, like on the ground to get rid of every single one of them. Like you're kind of still at risk there. So it sort of creates a scenario where 6-9 months, maybe like Iran flips, but there's enough unrest in the region that we're still talking about the Strait of Hormuz being blocked. So
So yes, that is the nightmare scenario. I agree with you. I guess I'm taking the other side just based on the last 48 hours of data, and that's what I'm trying to say. What has changed since the last time you and I got on a podcast? And I think what's changed to me is, number one, clearly Israel and the U.S. are ready to take it to a punitive place,
mhm.
which is very painful for Iran, especially to withstand that 6-9 months. And the second is just the pace of the drones has dropped off beneath that 160 a day, which is surprising. Now, your point is like, well, it doesn't matter. They don't have to hit Dubai and Abu Dhabi and Qatar. They just need to hit a ship. Um, and my point is like, yes, but that has to be connected to the first point, which is the punitive point. Once the
Yeah.
B-52s start flying above your, like, the reason the B-2s don't matter, when you use B-2s, they're stealth bombers. You use them because you're still afraid of the people you're bombing in some way, shape, or form. They're super advanced, but America uses them because it still respects its opponent. When the US pulls out the B-52s, it's like, it's just, they're just like laughing at you now. They're using like the tight end as the running back. They're just like, you can't stop us at all. Like, and that's going to get very painful. And that's why President Trump is saying what he's saying. Overall, let me just put it this way. Going back to President Trump and his preferences, uh, I think I think you've nailed the risk on the Iran side. I agree with you. I just think after watching everything today, both his real commitment to the security of the Strait of Hormuz, which, by the way, is tripling down on establishment American foreign policy.
Hmm.
My fear was that he was going to go into some sort of an isolationist, sort of, like MAGA sphere, where he says, I don't actually care about oil transiting the Strait of Hormuz. He did not elect to do that.
Not
American,
yet. I mean, there were reports today that they were talking about limiting energy exports and that the United States is self-sufficient. Like that's in the background. Those talks are there in the background. So it's not a zero on that signal. But I agree with you that the preponderance of the evidence is what you're talking about. But there is some counter evidence to that.
yeah. So look, all I'm saying is that if that is the case, if he is willing to take it to a punitive place with Iran, I think at least from the American sort of side of this, because it's a game theory with US, Israel, and Iran, and maybe some others, I think that's important that he's reiterated that. And I also think that, that he's a reader and he's going to do something about it. So I do think that President Trump is now starting to think about downside risks to the US economy, to global economy, to markets, to everything else, to his legacy. And so, I mean, at least that side of this equation is moving in the direction which I think is positive for eventual de escalation. And by the way, it's not because of tacoing. Trump always chickens out. That's the popular meme. It's not just because of that. Like, again, and we talked about this on this podcast. I mean, I do think that objectively, President Trump is going to be able to say, we set them back by 10 years. Missiles, drone manufacturing, drone capacity. The Navy is sunk. The whole Navy is sunk. Like, this is a fact. When
Did
you
you
go
see that
down,
insane part of the press conference where he was like, I preferred to keep the ships, but the guy said they just like blowing them up is more fun. So they blew them up. But I thought, wait, maybe we could keep the ships. It's like, what are we like? I can't
what are we
even.
talking about? Yeah. I mean, you know,
Oh, I also did to lighten it up just for a second. The last podcast was called Heat Check, and we were trying to find the right heat check analogy, but I think we actually missed the metaphor just a little bit. It's not that President Trump is throwing up heat checks because I don't think it qualifies as a heat check yet. He has to do a couple more. But I think to steal from Bill Simmons' parlance, he's the American irrational confidence guy. That's really what he is. So now I'm wondering, like, if, like, I mean, this is going to be imperfect, and I'm sorry if he's not going to be listening to this, but I'm sorry if he ever listens to this because I actually really really like him as a basketball player. But is Donald Trump Russell Westbrook?
oh,
Like, is
okay.
it's just I'm just gonna barrel like 110 miles per hour full speed at everything, and I'm getting my stats. I'm stealing my rebounds from you, so I get my triple doubles, and I'm done once I get my stats. And it's okay, 41 and 41. That's all I need. Like, I don't need anything more than that. He's the irrational
41 and
confidence guy.
41. The Sacramento Kings are not 41 and 41. So, look, the
Well, yeah,
reason
I'm
that
talking
I
about
don't,
the Thunder days. Now it's
yeah,
the
I don't know if we can do that. I don't know if we can do that, Jacob, because irrational confidence is a guy who comes off the bench, and it is correlated with heat checks because they are that guy, right? So, like,
yeah, but
it's
they're not always hot. Like, you put the irrational confidence guy in, and some days he has it, and some days he doesn't have it, and you got
no,
to
you know
pull him
what?
out really
I,
fast.
I, I don't know if that applies. It's just like because the US is too powerful to be the irrationally confident guy.
Well,
Qatar.
yes, the American military covers up all manner of sins. I agree with
That's
that.
right.
But I just mean the way that he's going in. He, like,
Like
woke
Muammar
up one day and he was like,
Gaddafi.
you know what,
Jacob,
Iran.
the,
Let's
the,
do Iran. I've decided that. Let's go.
the, I think the OG irrational confident guy was Muammar Gaddafi. That was like, he was just
Yeah, he was
like,
he was up there. Yeah.
I think that's a good one, right? Like, I think, no, I don't know who the US is. Maybe like Embiid in its MVP season, you know? Okay, this is
Mhm.
going to be a tortured analogy. Just hear me out. Everyone who is not in the Venn diagram cross section of basketball fans and geopolitics, you guys can go brew some tea, see what the kids are doing. Maybe like go into a sprint if you're on the treadmill for the next 5 minutes. But hear me out. Joel Embiid was an MVP in the NBA. He's an incredible talent. Quite frankly, the only reason the United States of America beat the Serbian team is because Joel Embiid showed up in that fourth quarter. I mean,
Mhm.
and Steph Curry, did some fucking three
Mm,
pointers.
yeah.
But like Joel Embiid, when you see him taking those mid range jumpers, you're like, bro, just go inside. And this is like, I think what Trump is actually, it's like for the last 25 years, since 1999, which was an incredible military engagement where the United States of America was like, yeah, we don't want to fight Serbs hand to hand. Like, hell no. We're just going to bomb them from 30,000 feet. And then, for some reason, the next 25 years, the United States of America is like, you know what we need to do? We need to engage some ground troops. We need to build Iraqis' indoor plumbing. Our Marines have to go door to door and ask Iraqi families if they need air conditioning. Like, what the hell? So you have this example in 1999 where the United States, this is how you should play the game of geopolitics. Hey, Joel, you're 7'1", go inside and maybe learn how to do a baby hook. And then for 25 years, the United States of America is that guy, that 7'1" chiseled demigod who's like, no, I'm going to do a fadeaway from the baseline. Why?
Well, hold
But
on.
why?
Joel Embiid was never a chiseled demigod. Like there were all those reports about how he was eating like 3 milkshakes and 4 Big Macs a day, like going into the season or whatever.
You extended this analogy towards the fact that we're in a multipolar world and the U.S. is not a chiseled demigod. Nonetheless, the point I'm getting at is that for 25 years, the U.S. played the sport of geopolitics in a wrong way. Why commit yourself to rebuilding nations? Why commit all these resources to, like nation building? Why not just do what you did in college in 1999 when you beat the crap out of that one country in the middle of nowhere? And President Trump is like, that's to me the basketball analogy, if you will. It's not the heat check. It's not irrational confidence. It's like the guy who's going back to his roots and being like, oh shit.
It's not even that. I think that's too tortured. What you're really talking about is Shaquille O'Neal.
Yes.
Like it's just brute force and power. I'm not going to learn to shoot free throws. I'm not going to get in shape. I'm just 320 pounds and I move really fast and I'm going to shove it down your throat.
Yes.
And I'm going to break the backboard and I'm going to embarrass you. And we're just.
And Iran is Chris Dudley on that famous dunk. Like, this is what it is. Like throwing a basketball at Shaq. Like, as Shaq is like, what? That basketball is like a drone over Strait of Hormuz.
Oh.
Look.
Yes, yes. The Iranian hypersonic missile is Chris Dudley lobbing that basketball across the floor, and Shaq is just like, "You okay? Like now you're gonna see the B-52s. Like now we're coming for you."
Death, fire, and fury.
Death, fire, and fury. Okay, wait. So the second point though that I wanted to make was that I sort of brought this up with Ed, but I keep on circling it. If I was advising Chinese leadership, Japanese leadership, South Korean leadership, Indian leadership, any one of them, I would be telling them, the Strait of Hormuz, it really is geographically unique. There is no other choke point like it. And there's also no compelling reason that your country should be dependent on it. You could have decided 10 to 15 years ago not to be dependent on it. Why don't you start making your plans today? Take the gift that President Trump is offering you. He's offering to open up the Strait of Hormuz. Cool. It will probably be open soon, but you should start making plans to no longer depend on this region anymore. Because who, after this entire episode, if they have a choice, and not all countries will have a choice, like Pakistan, sorry, you're not going to have a choice. You're not wealthy enough, like whatever. But if you're Japan, if you're China, if you're even India, you don't have to be dependent on this region. There's enough renewable technology and shale and everything else out there such that you don't need to be importing things from the Persian Gulf. Where am I wrong about that? You think people are just going to get lazy and it was just a one-day price spike and we're done? Because I look at this, and if you're one of these countries that is dependent, it should be a major inflection point. If the United States couldn't figure out the Middle East when it was in the Shaquille O'Neal moment of its flourishing, what makes you think you're going to deal with the Middle East? This is just how it's going to be for the next 10 or 15 years.
I just think it's difficult, Jacob. I mean, China is a pretty competent country run by relatively competent, policymakers. Sure, many bad things, many good things. They are trying to do what you're saying, what you're asking them to do. They're trying to convert.
And they're sitting pretty right now. They're in the best position of all these countries in terms of their relationship with the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, no, maybe because they have significantly expanded their strategic reserve. You're correct about that. But they're extremely vulnerable to Strait of Hormuz still. Just as much as South Korea, Japan, or Taiwan. So
but if China keeps building renewables and nuclear at the pace that they currently are, in 5 years, probably not.
I've done the math. It's more 10 years.
10 years, okay.
But this is literally what I'm working on right now because it's actually a critical geopolitical question. Like, when does China invade Taiwan? And the answer is when it doesn't have to depend on my taxes, my dollars, financing the Fifth Fleet to save them. And I think the answer is 5 to 10 years, depending what you think they would do in a case of a conflict. So the math gets a little bit complicated. Like, how much do you want to ration energy at that point? How much do you want to take
Hmm.
from your civilian economy? How much do you want the war with Taiwan in the future to be painful for your citizens? If you want it to be an excursion, as President Trump has called this adventure, if you want it to be a special military operation, as Putin has called the intervention in Ukraine, then China probably needs 10 more years. And so the reason I say this, Jacob, is that you're correct, but it's difficult. It is difficult to wean oneself off of oil. And everybody listening to here who's like, well, just go to EVs, electric vehicles. It's actually, that's only 30% of global use of oil. And there's many forms of transportation, particularly sea transportation and freight and air freight, which will never ever be weaned off of gasoline unless we discovered some portable fusion reactors. There's just certain things we will never be able to power without diesel or kerosene, in particularly the military stuff. And this was where Pete Hegseth was like, solar power is for sissies, like you're not going to power a
Don't
fighter
call him
jet.
Pete Hegseth. We're calling him Crystal Meth Rumsfeld from now on. I'm
You're
not
not going
calling
to
him
power
anything.
a fighter jet with a battery. It's like, okay, bro, like, yes, that's true.
No, you could power it with sustainable aviation fuel grown from soybeans in the American Midwest. Scott Bessent, that North Dakota soybean
But
farm.
listen,
There you go.
but listen,
Connect
but
the
listen,
dots.
Jacob. Here's the reason that Pete is wrong. Pete, as if he's my boy and we go raving.
Yeah, your boy.
Here is why Secretary of War Hegseth is incorrect. While you may not be able to power a fighter jet with a battery, converting the American fleet to EVs would allow the US military to have access to more fuel in case of a conflict. And that's what the Chinese are doing. The Chinese aren't like, girly men, as Arnold complained. They are headfirst plunging into the EV transition so that they one day can save the kerosene and the diesel for their military if so required. This is not about climate change. I mean, it is about efficiency, it is about exports. They do want to have great products. I'm not saying it's just about national security, but they are doing what you're saying they should do. It's China, right? As you said, it's not Pakistan, it's China, and it's taking a very long time. It's not such an easy transition. I don't think it's because of lack of desire. Sorry, my microphone fell. I think it's just difficult. It's complicated. It takes time.
It's also the part of the metaphor where the Dune metaphor actually goes away, because when Frank Herbert wrote Dune, there really was only oil, and there really was only Middle Eastern oil. Like, the United States was beginning to falter in terms of oil production. We didn't have shale and everything else. Um, so like there's a one-to-one relationship between the spice and between oil, and there's no substitute in the Dune universe for the spice. My point is, in 2026, there is substitutes for the spice.
Fair.
Like, the Dune books actually don't make sense in 2026 because the Harkonnens can be like, oh shit, you're gonna blow up Arrakis. That's cool. We're gonna go with geothermal on our shitty planet over here. Like, we'll be fine. We'll figure something else out. Like, we'll go. I mean, I guess you need spice for bending space, but still, like, there's no longer a one-to-one relationship where oil is the be all end all irreplaceable commodity. There's more of it than there's ever been before. You can get more of it by using new technologies, or you can embrace other technologies and not be so completely dependent on it. So almost that, I mean, I don't want to say that Dune is not perfect, because I want to use Dune in every single analysis that we do, but like, it starts to break down a little bit because it's now a choice. It's no longer the necessity or the reality.
You're right. The book was written in 1965. I just checked. That's pre-North Sea oil as well. That's pretty much everything other than the U.S. production. So you're right. I mean, I do think we're in a different situation, and I do think that there are certain things, however, that we will always need oil for. And here is where I would say we will never be in a world where we don't need the Middle East. So currently we use about 95 million barrels a day of total global production. Transportation, the light vehicle and trucks, which can be converted, is about 30% of that. let's say 40% to be generous, let's say 50% to be super generous. Like we managed to find alternatives to oil and we cut the global production to 45 million. The truth is that Middle East barrel of oil is still the cheapest. And they produce about 20, I think, million altogether, maybe 25. No, it's 20. It's about 20 million barrels. So the Middle East will produce half of the world's 50 million barrels of demand, even when we achieve your world, Jacob. You know what I mean? Because if you want to have cheap oil, you'll always have to rely on Saudi Arabia and its GCC cousins. I don't, unless we decide, no, it's too volatile, let's pay $80 a barrel for that sweet Canadian tar sands. So Canadian tar sands no longer break even at 80.
It's not we decide. It's what if the Strait of Hormuz closes every couple of years? Like what if these types of conflicts start happening? I mean, the Strait of Hormuz, like this was the thing that never happened before. This was the thing that everybody was afraid of. Yeah, go.
Great point. So first of all, that is my nightmare scenario. I think I've floated it on this podcast as well. Decade-long.
Yeah, and I was dismissive of it at first, and now I'm like, I'm in the garage,
the tables have turned.
Like taping the push pins on the map.
Yeah, now the tables have turned, baby. Okay, look. Let's talk about something you and I have not talked, and I'm surprised you haven't brought this up because you're a little bit of an India file.
I am, yeah, sure am.
So did you notice how there were two Iranian, I think, frigates or destroyers? One was sunk by the Americans. The other one was given refuge by India.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so why? Obviously, India is trying to be nice. 180 people don't have to die. But I think
they had also invited the Iranian frigate for the exercise. So it was like, it looked pretty bad if you invite them and then you get blown up by the ally.
Well, one of them did get blown up now. Yeah. I think India is just trying to do the right thing here. But I do think there's another thing here. I think that behind the scenes, Jacob, there's immense pressure on Iran to stop doing what they're doing. And once President Trump backs off from regime change, this is why regime change is so important. And why your point that they can still send drones one every month. Yes, they can. You're right. But to what end and for what cost? If President Trump tells you, I'm done, I don't care about regime change, and you're like, fuck you, we're still going to throw a drone, you're going to first and foremost have to face those B-52s that will carpet bomb you. But second of all, China and India, which are Iran's allies. I mean, India is, not maybe, I think it's too strong to say it.
Partner.
Yeah, partner. But I think both India and China have considerable leverage on Iran. They do buy its oil, and India's move with the ship, I think, was designed to kind of also continue to have a way to talk to Tehran as a friend. And I think that both India and China are going to put immense pressure on Iran because we're not in the future that you are asking them to bring forward. You're asking them to bring forward this world where you don't need Strait of Hormuz, but we're not there yet. And you're talking about India and China, which combined are 2.5 billion people. Very powerful countries, nuclear powers, and they're probably right now telling Iran, like, look, man, I know you're hurting. I know it was a sucker punch by the US and Israel in a bar fight. But let's buy you a beer. Okay, maybe bad example. Let's buy you a saffron tea. You just calm down, cool down, and don't fight the Americans on this one. We'll help you on X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad you brought up India. So there's two things here. First of all, China and India, unlike the Europeans, can go buy Russian oil. And I'll just quote President Putin said this today.
Yeah, I know. I love it.
If European companies and European buyers suddenly decide to reorient, that's good, Vladimir, themselves and provide us with long-term sustainable cooperation, free from political pressures, then yes, we've never refused it. We're ready to work with Europeans too. He's not going to work with Europeans. The Europeans are not going to work with him. The Indians and the Russians can replace the Middle East oil because they can get it from Russia. I'm not saying it's perfect, but we can get into that. The second part, though, and this is a question because I don't have an answer, and I think I brought it up as an anomaly on the podcast. The week before all of this started, Narendra Modi was in Israel, and he and Netanyahu were having a positively gushing bromance. I mean, it was hot and heavy. There is no way that India didn't know what was coming, I think. And I don't know the answer to this question. What did India know? When did it know? What does it think about this? What does Modi think about all this? Is this some kind of Hindu, Judeo Christian alignment against the Muslims in the long run? Was this just Modi got a heads up and he
That's
was like,
deep.
guys, this is happening. I guess we should call the Russians, or we should do something, or we should start working on, whatever else, or let's, like, we have a little bit of extra time, but that's all we have. I'm really confused about what India's role is and all that. And it goes back to the hornet's nest that you kicked up when you said that no, countries don't need to import anything from Israel. India is one of those countries that wants to import some of that fancy defense technology and things like that. But it can't just be all about that. Like, Israel doesn't have enough to make India decide to turn their backs not just on Iran, but on the Gulf states and everybody else. I think you're right. I think it's a huge open question and it's super important. And I don't know. I don't know the answer to the question. I don't know where India is in all of this, honestly.
Well, I think India and China are together in the same boat, along with South Korea and Taiwan and Japan and the entire Indo-Pacific region, in that, hey, we actually do need that 20 million barrels a day that transits through the Strait. 15, actually, because Saudi Arabia can divert 5 million via pipeline to the Red Sea. Look, the math doesn't square up. And what I mean by that, I suspect, I don't have knowledge here, so I'm speaking blindly, but I suspect there's a lot of floating oil, Russian shadow fleet, as they call it. It's out there somewhere, and that oil is just sitting on ships.
Yeah.
That oil is the oil that India and China can now buy. But that is oil that was already pumped and then just stored on a ship. Russia has like maybe 300,000 extra barrels a day of production it can send somewhere. Its oil is already being bought. There is just no way to replace Strait of Hormuz. I mean, you're talking like, yeah, there's just nobody. And when at one point the White House, I think it was the spokeswoman, when she said like, "Well, we got Venezuela coming online." Like,
Not
girl,
helpful.
like, what are you talking about? There is no way to replace the stuff that transits through the Strait of Hormuz. Now, there's stock of supply, and this is what listeners have to understand. There's a difference between stock and flow. Yes, if the flow gets interrupted for like 3 months, we've got plenty of stock squirreled around the cushions of the global proverbial couch, where we can be like, oh shit, look at this candy bar. We can just eat that. There is a lot of that around the world in floating storage, in strategic reserves. But if that flow gets interrupted for longer than like a month, month and a half, like Jacob, there's just no way to replace it. That's way too much for everyone.
Well,
And
and I mean,
that's,
also to underscore your point, I mean, and that's for oil. There is not stock of fertilizer. There is not
yep,
necessarily stock of LNGs, and that's where these other commodities like really
LNG
start
is
to
a
worry
great
me.
point. And this is where I think what we're going to see more countries do is what we saw France. So I don't know if you know this. I read it somewhere. I got to confirm it. But in 1987, the Soviets were also trying to demine the Strait of Hormuz.
Hmm.
The US and the Soviets collaborated together in demining the Strait of Hormuz. We have France sending an aircraft carrier and 2 Mistral helicopter carriers. There was just a lot of like Europe hating over the last couple of weeks. Like, oh, look at them. They're going to write a letter. It's like, well, first of all, they didn't start the war. What do you want Europe to fucking do? But France is sending a nuclear powered aircraft carrier and 2 Mistral helicopter carriers, which are the most advanced helicopter carriers in the world.
Did
So,
you see
no.
that Macron was on the aircraft carrier today? He came and gave it a special visit.
Yeah. So,
It was
like,
cute.
this is 8 ships in total that France is sending. It's not 47 that America has, but it's not 0. So, it's 20% of what America is sending. That's pretty large for France. What I'm getting at is that if we get into the scenario you're describing, Jacob, where for some odd reason the Iranians do want to meet their maker and do want to meet the B 52 and do want to continue to threaten the Strait of Hormuz, I don't think that only the US Navy is going to be involved. I do think that what you're going to actually see in this crazy multipolar world is a true, like, international coalition, which, by the way, we saw off the coast of Somalia, we saw off the coast of Red Sea, And it's not just going to be France. France is the first one because I've always said France actually does have global power projection capabilities. People make fun of France, which is fine. Continue to make fun of them, but they do have a nuclear powered aircraft carrier, which means they can throw 40 Rafales outside of your city in a matter of weeks. Like that's kind of like just them and China, and then of course US. I think China's going to get involved. Absolutely. In fact, one of the things that I would expect to see come out of the summit that's coming up in 3 weeks between Xi and Trump is that she's going to say, like, hey, bro, okay, I heard you. Do you want me to participate in this operation to ensure that shipping is secured? And I do
That's
think that,
interesting. You think that the Chinese will deploy a carrier strike group to help police ships going through the Strait of Hormuz?
well, they deployed destroyers off the coast of Somalia. I forgot what class of ships they sent, but they
Yeah,
did
that's that.
participate.
We're talking about something very, very different, like the Somalia, whatever. Like,
But why?
no
Why?
offense to
Well,
the
first of all,
Somalians.
yes. First of all, it's different in that this is infinitely more important to the Chinese.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So this actually matters to Beijing and their economy. And second of all, this is Donald Trump, baby. Like if you offer to alleviate the burden on the American country for global defense, like why would Donald J. Trump say no to that? That's like the most MAGA thing ever. Like, oh, you want to do your job? You want to clean up this? Okay, fine. It is the mess I made, so maybe a bad example, but it matters more to you than it does to me. It's the ultimate MAGA move. Like, hey, I got the Chinese to finally start doing their job. This should be their responsibility.
Yes, I decided to invite the Chinese to police the Strait of Hormuz. They
I
will
know
now
it
be
sounds weird.
responsible for it.
I know
Yeah,
it sounds weird. I
no,
know it does.
I like it. It's out there. Like if it happens, like yeah, you're breaking my brain a little bit.
I mean, India should get involved. Like,
Yeah.
but honestly, like in this particular situation, if Iran chooses to do what we both fear that it might, it does become a global problem. Now, again, people who have liberals listening to this are going to tear themselves apart now because they're going to be like, no, but America did this. It's America's fault. It's like, yeah, but at that point, like, we're past that. Like,
No, if you're truly there, it's not about being liberal. You have to go. And let me be very, very clear, listeners. I don't want to get any hate mail about this. This Iranian regime, there are a bunch of theocratic, like ideologically poisoned, sinister assholes. Like there is nothing I like about them. But if you are, buying into like the resistance ideology, there is some small part of you that has to be like, I mean, like if what you say comes true, so everybody's gonna be against them, literally everyone, just because they have the oil. Like this is what Iran has always feared, going back like 100 years, that they were going to get screwed because they had the oil and everybody else wants the oil, and they'll say whatever they want to say about it. But ultimately, whether it's the Chinese or the French or the Americans or the Russians or the Soviets when they were the Soviets, like either you give us the oil or, to your point, you meet the B-52s. Like now maybe you understand why this population gave its future over to a bunch of ayatollahs who were promising them, delusions of grandeur. I don't know. There's some small part of me. I mean, I don't feel bad for the regime, but I feel bad for the Iranian people. Like this sucks.
well, yeah, it does. And that's why, you know, they better not go the punitive route.
Well, they're going. I mean, do you see any sign that they're not? I see no sign that Iran is ready to throw in the white towel.
Well,
If anything, I see the opposite.
I don't know about that. And the reason I say this is, yes, they chose. Let's get back. What's his name? Mojtaba
Khamenei, first of his name, defender of the peacock throne, and blah 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 blah.
Let's get back to Mojtaba in a second. When you ask the question, do I see any signs that they're rolling back? I do. Let me give you my read of the situation. First and foremost, I made fun of President Trump for being like me in a restaurant where I don't know what I want to order. I end up eating my girl's food because I ordered wrong.
Yeah.
But like, let's talk about their verbiage. Oh, everyone can transit. Only Israelis and Americans can transit the Strait of Hormuz. That's what they said on Friday. Today,
this is good.
it's anyone who kicks out the Israeli and American ambassadors any European country, any European or Arab state that kicks out the Israeli and American ambassadors can get their oil through. No mention of India and China. I guess they're scot free, baby.
Yeah.
You know. So what am I getting at? I mean, they're already themselves equivocating. And again, just like if you go into a restaurant like President Trump and you don't know what to order, you don't know what to order. Just similarly, once you're like Iran is like the father who keeps moving the goalposts and then the kids walk all over him. They don't. Here is what a mean, like I mean business Islamic Republic would say. The Strait of Hormuz is shut. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Mic drop. That's what they would say. Not like, oh, if you kick out the ambassador, but he comes back, and then you tell him, pack your shit up in a U-Haul, but you got to use our moving company that's been like approved by a halal mullah, and then, you have to send a FedEx and a fax to a number in com. No, come on. They're just like, they're fishing here themselves. I mean, that's a sign to me that they are not ready for this. And the other sign that they're not ready for it is because, well, again, the drone operations seem to be flailing.
Yeah.
And by the way, going back to Mujtaba, yes, picking this guy seems like provoking Trump. On the other hand, like if you're going to make a peace with Americans, you can't use a liberal supreme leader. You know what I mean? Like you need somebody who can actually stand behind a regime. So I'm comfortable with a hardliner. Sometimes, it takes a Nixon to go to China. Maybe it takes Mujtaba to like make a deal with the Americans.
The problem with, I mean, maybe, but his dad, his wife, multiple members of his family were killed in the strike on the compound. So this is like Nixon, if also the Chinese killed Nixon's wife. And what was the name of Nixon's dog? I forget the name of Nixon's dog. And, whoever else was important to Nixon. Not that anybody was important to Nixon because he was like a borderline sociopath. But like, you know what I mean? Like this, like Mojtaba, like, I mean, maybe he'll do it. But like, I cannot imagine his background and also what just happened to him that he's going to bend the knee. That seems to me like a vote of defiance. And maybe that's why I said like that's where I'm getting all in my garage with the push pins, because it has to be like, okay, maybe they're buying themselves a couple days. Like we just need to mess with the Strait a couple more days. We need to show people that we can actually drive up the cost
100%.
a little bit. Then they'll assassinate this guy. Then we'll put up the guy who negotiates, and then we can figure out where we got to go. But we haven't shown that we can do enough yet.
Just to be clear, we have no idea what's going to happen. But I do think that scenario you just outlined. There's like, let's say 3 scenarios, right? One scenario is like once Trump says, "I won," the Iranians come back and say, "No, we won, but we're good." So that's an unlikely scenario. We agree. The second scenario is like the Iranians have to show the rest of the world like that they might be willing to take that B-52 pain in the face for at least a week.
Yeah.
And then the final scenario is this is a decade-long thing. They found Allah again. Like they're waiting for the Mahdi. Let's go. And I think that last scenario is unlikely because I just don't believe they're actually religious zealots. I think this is late stage communism. This is late stage Soviet Union. This is the part of the evil empire where nobody actually fucking believes Senator Palpatine, Emperor Palpatine anymore. Everyone's in it, for the imperial credits.
I think you're right about the regime, but like this is also it's classic. It's almost like the tropes of Shia Islam are repeating themselves, because then it becomes more than just about Iran itself. Like the Shia rank and file in Iraq, in Bahrain, in the oil producing regions, in Saudi Arabia.
So let's talk about that. But let's talk about that.
Well, I'm not an expert enough to talk about it. We'd really need Kamran on. It's just to say, like, you're right about the kleptocratic bros at the top, but what is happening to the people on the ground who are being like, they're watching their oil depots go up. They're watching the sulfuric whatever rain down upon them. The B-52s are coming. Everybody's out to get them. Nobody is protecting them. Like their backs are against the wall. Their religious leaders are being killed. The fatwas are being put out by, the Iraqi Shia leader.
Yeah, so Ali al-Sistani is considered the greatest Shia cleric. He did put out the fatwa. That happened, I
Like, what
think.
what if the Shia are the Fremen, to bring it really back to do, like.
But okay, fine. Let's see what happens. There was a great Reuters article at the beginning of this conflict about how Iraqi militias are kind of quiet. And one of
Mhm.
my favorite lines in this was the best Reuters reporting over the last week. One of the lines there was like they were talking to some Shia militia guy, like he works for the militia. He was like, look, you got to understand, our politicians are now kind of wealthy. Their kids are all in the West studying and getting good healthcare. Like, they're not in it. They're not in it for the life anymore, man. They don't want the smoke. And so far, I got to say, Jacob, it seems prescient. It's a weekend. The Iraqis have been kind of quiet. The Iraqi Shias, which I always thought was the biggest risk. Why is Iraq the biggest risk? Because it actually creates a land bridge between Saudi Arabia and Iran, a land bridge of risk. If suddenly Iran gets involved in some shape, way, or form, the problem then becomes that threatens Saudi Arabia. I think the problem for the Iranians, however, is that if they were banking on Iraqi Shias getting involved, they should have remembered this is a country that's had to deal with 23 years of basically sectarian war. I just don't think anyone in Iraq is looking for another decade of this stuff. And so that's why
Yeah.
you haven't actually seen anyone get involved. I mean, I think maybe it's as simple as this. The Occam's razor here is that Iran is very alone, very alone. Who is there to help them? Russia obviously is loving what's happening. Sanctions are being removed, oil
Yep.
prices high. But what are they going to do? Send Iranians some drones they bought from Iran 12 months ago? Like, what is Russia going to do in this moment other than moral support? And probably, yes, I do assume that Russians are helping them with intelligence. Like, hey, here's a base, here's an American base. Like, and it was funny because when Trump was asked about that on Air Force One during one of the
Great
press
line.
gaggles.
Credit where credit's due. He
right?
had the right answer.
He was like, well, we do it to them. What do you want me to do?
No. His answer was if they are, they're doing a terrible job.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's another one. But first he said,
perfect.
We do it to
it's
them.
amazing
Don't
because 95% of the time the man is a raving lunatic, and then he pulls that out, and I'm like, is it all an act? Like, is there really a brain in there
it's not
somewhere?
an act. I think he was made for TV. Like, I think you're underestimating like his natural talent as just an entertainer. If real people weren't dying, like, this would be a great television show, right? Like, we're all gripped. He's flip-flopping left, right, and center. Oil prices are going up and down. I mean, he's created a whole industry by himself, including ourselves. Like, holy shit, we're swimming in Trump's wake. Unfortunately, of course, real people are dying, both in, American allied countries and in Iran. But yes, he definitely knows how to crack a line because he was made for TV.
Yeah. All right. Last word to you. Anything we didn't hit before we get out of here? We will be back on Friday to pick up the carnage of the week and see where we're at. And who knows where we'll be between now and then.
I don't know what the last word is. I think one other thing we didn't talk about. We talked about all sorts of ways in which I think Iran is starting to signal that they're not in it for the long haul. But one other thing I would say is that they've been very quiet over the last, let's say, 12 hours. Like, since they picked their new supreme leader, Mujtaba, and since President Trump went back and forth, tacoing, as people like to say, they haven't really said anything. And I just want to leave you with this thought, Jacob. I just wish Monty Python was still with us. Because I think
Yeah.
a skit, a little scene that only Monty Python could do. This is what I want. This is what I want for my birthday, Jacob, for my 50th birthday one day. I want somebody to recreate a Monty Python skit where several senior Islamic clerics who have spent decades studying Islamic jurisprudence have to explain to Mujtaba the taco trade. That's it. That's the skit. It's like 7 minutes of basically 7 dudes in robes with PhDs in Islamic Shia theology. being like, so look, it's like when this guy Donald Trump, he comes and he says X, but it's really Y, and it's called taco because it stands for Trump always chickens out. And Mujtaba goes, okay,
Well,
but
no, and
why
then they
isn't
also have to say, and this is not to be confused with Mexican tacos, which is where they take something like a pita and they put something like some of our food into it and put some sauce on it. So it's a play on words. So they really have to go there too before they can.
No, it's just a whole thing,
or,
right?
or,
And
or
he's
some
like, "What?"
or some upstart like young cleric is like, I'm very sure that taco is not what you're saying. It's really a Mexican delicacy that involves all of these like
No, no, no,
non-halal
no.
foods.
I saw it on X. This guy Jacob Shapiro, yes, a Jew, but listen, he's got a good X stream. Let me tell you, I follow him closely. You know what I mean? And listen, I mean that would be a great Monty Python skit. I'll tell you that.
Well, I mean, some of them are still alive, so somehow we need to get
John Cleese.
John Cleese to listen to this podcast. John, if you're out there,
I grew up on Monty Python in former Yugoslavia. It was I basically learned English that way. So you know what I mean? Like those guys are legends, and we need more of that kind of humor.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that. And listeners, we'll see you on Friday. Assuming something crazy doesn't happen before then, we'll emergency it up if we have to. But otherwise, we'll see you Friday.